Here's the engineering drawing for the new reel stud. Yeah, we're making some changes, you know. It's an exciting damn thing, ain't it? Lots of headaches. Here's the calculations area down here in the margin. Yeah. Very exciting and whatever. Yeah. It's a mechanical drawing of sorts, you know. Not a very good one, but hey. Whatever. You know, it's the plan. Bubba's plan. Okay, so now let's really get down and talk about the dip-pak reel stud a little bit. You know, this is the old one over here, alright? The one with the red pointer's pointing to. And let me take it apart for you because this thing's a real gas. You know, it's got some defects. I got them oriented to where they're both the right side up, okay? Take out that screw there, which is, I don't know, 5/16 by 3/4 national course round head, huh? Yeah, I'm not sure if it's original or not, but there it is anyway. And, let's see. Yeah, I'll take this stuff off of here for you. Yeah, so yeah, and like that. Now this is the old one. This thing I refastened, okay, in my original attempt. This piece of 1/4 inch thick plastic, which is apparently the same plastic as the reel. I was going to reuse this one, and I drilled and tapped the back, okay, and I screwed it on. I drilled and tapped the rear of it and screwed it on there with 632 screws, okay. But then later on I realized that that wasn't going to work because the stud is straight, okay, but it's leaning to the left and downward, and you know, I could bend the stud, but you can't bend it straight because it's anchored, or actually in this case it's brazed to the rear, okay. And that's why I went through the trouble of doing this, because apparently the old one fell out. It was either a press fit, or it was welded in and the weld was defective, or maybe it was a taper even, a partial Morse taper or whatever it was. But whatever it was, wasn't up to snuff, and it fell apart, and this was flat backed. So this is the new one, alright. This is all this white stuff you see in these holes here. That's epoxy. This is I call it the boss. This is the rear part, this round boss, which is 1 3/4 diameter. This has to fit through that hole that I made in the dip-pak earlier. And that's the boss. It's got seven a quarter inch national course bolts holding it on, and they're epoxied. They're epoxied in. The threads are epoxied. Underneath the heads are epoxied. The top of the heads are epoxied. And the next part of the deal is I'm not going to reuse this plastic thing here. And what I am going to use is Formica, believe it or not, which I measured. It comes out to 48 thousandths thick. So I'm going to have like 5 pieces. This thing is 0.245 thick, very near 1/4 inch. So it just so happens that 5 pieces of Formica will be 0.245 thick. So that works out good. So I'm going to have what they call a multi-disc dry clutch. Yeah. Okay. And one of them is going to be glued to this. All right. This hole is going to be bored. It's actually, I'm going to drill it out of my drill press to 1/2 inch and then take it to my buddy's milling machine. And then we're going to plunge mill it from this side, bolt it to the mill table, plunge mill it 5/8 in the center, okay, all the way through. And then we take the piece of 5/8 cold rolled, which is knurled and has a taper on the end, and press it into here. So that way I know that the new one is square to the back plate, and that the back plate is square to the welder, and And I couldn't figure out a way to attach this boss to this plate without having this plate warp. And I got a giant welder, okay? I could make super welds with it and stuff. And I didn't want to risk going through all this nuisance again. So so I just drilled it. I drilled it with a number 7 and tapped it out. And I countersunk these. These are flathead machine screws in here. And so that's how that works, okay? But as you can tell, this stuff is going to need a little reconfabulation. That goes on there, okay? This goes there. This goes here. And the screw goes in. But interestingly, with this stud on the left, the original stud, I can have this screw in by only, I already measured this, okay? You can have this screw in 1/2 of one turn, just engaged by 1/2 of one turn, and there's already a drag on the reel. I would consider it to be some type of considerable drag. So that means, I think that means, but I'm not sure on this, that somebody somewhere along the line, probably what happened is they cut part of this shaft off and they drove it in further, and then they brazed it, which is why all this discoloration is on here. This lightish area here, all around there, and it's darker on the outside. Of course, mine is just regular 1/4-inch steel plate. And these, let's see, this goes like yay. These two, I drilled all of these holes using the old one as a template. I had them fastened together, and I drilled all these 5 holes, even though this one has no use and it's not. And I didn't know the purpose of this notch, but I put it in anyway. I thought it might have a purpose later, but anyway, yeah. So these holes are in the exact same place as they are on here, and interestingly enough, this stud is centered. I measured the distance from the stud to that hole, the stud to that hole, and the stud to this hole. I couldn't measure it to any of these because it doesn't count, because they're not in the same they're not in the corner because the corner is missing. But it's close enough to where this thing is in the center of the square. This thing is. So on mine, it'll be in the same place. And this is temporarily drilled 1/4 inch right here. I had to fasten this down while I drilled all these. I drilled them all at the same time. I stepped it off with a compass divider and a little, I scratched it in there, you know, and I walked it off, you know, swinging the compass, blah, blah, blah. So I had to get 7, and I had to use 7 of them. I would have used 8, but I couldn't fit 8, okay, but I could fit 7. So I got 7 on there. So I want this thing to be on there for the duration. So it's on there for the duration, and you know, let me give you a close-up view. You know, take a close look at that right there, and take a close look at this thing right here. This thing is right, goes like that, eh? Yeah, these are the things. These are the things for the 90s and beyond. Well, the one on the right is. The one on the left isn't. The one on the left is garbage ready. What That's what I call GR or garbage ready. The one on the right is what I call HQ or high qual. Now, reason being, I made the extra effort to do all of this. That's epoxy in there. Don't forget, the bolts are in there. They're epoxied in. This thing is on for the duration. And by the way, those who think epoxy's not going to hold, I got some news for you. I bolted some stuff together. I bolted actually my old table saw. I bolted it to the base. And I epoxied the nuts on because I didn't have lock nuts at the time, all right? And I left it on there for 15 or 20 years. And then one time I wanted to take the top of the saw off from the base, and they were regular 5/16 National Course bolts, by the way. And I went to unscrew the bolts, and here's what happened. 3 of them, I had to turn the wrenches so hard that the bolts broke. The nuts didn't move on the shafts. So this thing, I can tell you, is on for the duration.